digitaljamsessions.com.
Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam special, coming at you live from London's MCM Comic Con. Today we're joined once again by Joe Twist from Yuki. We have Imre Jella back from Bossa Game Studios, and we have with us Tony from How to Write a Tune again.
Hello.
Welcome guys, and thanks for joining us. For the benefit of our listeners, could you just briefly explain who you are and what you do? And we'll start with you, Joe.
I'm Dr. Joe Twist. I'm the Chief Exec of UK Interactive Entertainment, which is the trade body and trade network for games and interactive entertainment businesses in the UK.
Wonderful, thank you. And Tony?
Hi, I'm Tony from How to Write a Tune. I'm producing direct the podcast How to Write a Tune. I'm also the founding director of GL Productions, who are a digital content creation company.
Wonderful, thank you. And Imre?
Hi, I'm Imre. I am one of the co-founders of Bossa Studios. I still didn't quite accept the fact, but I'm making games for a living.
You're in. It's too late now.
Yes.
Well, as I was saying, we're at Comic Con this year, and one of the things that we've noted on the show floor this year is a real explosion of VR exhibitors and people showing off their VR experiences. So we know that there's a HTC downstairs and an Oculus Rift and various different cardboard providers downstairs. But there still seems to be a little bit of a sense of uncertainty from the people, the consumers that are waiting to try these things, as to exactly what they're going to experience when they get this thing on their head. And I'm curious whether or not you think that there's still perhaps some work to be done in terms of just educating the consuming public about actually what does virtual reality really mean, and does 360 really count?
I mean, I think in the games industry we're really good at trying new ideas and trying things, and I think you have to learn, and you have to start somewhere. And you know, lots of people are saying this is the year of VR, as well as the year of esports, because all the headsets are hitting the marketplace this year. And you know, we have so many developers in this country who are world class, who are experimenting, and that's the point, you're experimenting. And I think for something like MCM Expo, it's about wanting to be present in the world in which you love. You know, and you can see every second person is dressed up as something because they want to be part of that culture and part of that story, part of that world. So VR allows you to actually inhabit that world in ways that no other medium can do, in my opinion.
What about you, Amir? What's your thoughts on this?
I agree with you.
I knew you were going to be awkward.
That is what I do. That is what I do. We've been experimenting with VR for a long time. I've done stuff for VR back in the 90s, and there was a little bubble and that burst. And I still have fears about this generation doing just that, except this time around people are not going to lose a couple of millions, but a couple of billions instead, which scares me. Having said that, just walking around and meeting developers in the UK, and what you'll find is the amazing talent which goes into that, and the amazing experiences people have already created for these devices, and the variety from the slapstick, like what we do, all the way to a proper gripping dramatic experiences, to more on the doku gaming, or I don't know how to say, the one where you can experience the Apollo program, which genuinely brought tears to my eyes. It was just so the variety and the innovation which you can already find, I have no question about that. So as far as the creative side goes, we already nailed it, and just every month, every week, every month you can find new stuff. We yet to see the business success and the penetration of the devices.
And I think, you know, for me, what's most exciting about VR is I am a woman in my 40s who's always played games, but has always been really crap at games. And because I've got zero patience, and I don't like game pads ever. I hate game pads, which is why when great tablet games came out, I immediately gravitated towards them. And it's the same with VR. For me, it breaks down so many physical barriers to participation. And I work with, and Amir does as well, with a charity called Special Effects, which helps disabled people play games. And I think for people with disabilities, for people who may have mental health issues, I think VR experiences are going to be incredibly powerful, and that's what I can't wait to see.
In particular, I'm very excited because of that about the HTC Vive, because that arrived out of the box with 2 controllers. And I know that the Oculus have plans later in the year, and I'm sure that the PlayStation version will come with a Move integration, as it should. But right now, the HTC Vive offers the best, because my hand moving around in the space, and I look down and I can see my hands and I can interact with things. those little things can really, really make you get lost in a universe, because you really feel like I'm there. And this becomes natural interaction. I reach out and grab something, and in real space, I reach out, punch someone, but not at the same time also get something. Make sure no people around you when you play a zombie action game. things will go wrong. Anyway, so that immersion, that physical immersion, that I actually move around in a space, that is absolutely brilliant.
So one of the things that we talked a lot about yesterday at the show was presence, and we talked with the guys from ESL about this idea of social presence within virtual and immersive environments. But I'm curious from your perspective, Tony, obviously you work a lot with the music industry and you're speaking to a lot of artists. Do you think there is a sentiment from the artists that they kind of get this, that they understand what the potential is?
I think so. Sometimes, I mean, it's very difficult to speak broadly on them, but they're getting there. But explaining, I think we forget talking about VR all the time, that people that don't talk about it all the time don't have a clue what we're talking about a lot of the time. So through the difference from 360 video into actual interactive VR, people don't necessarily know the difference to that. So a lot of the guys we speak to tend to have not put their finger on that yet. They see the kind of potential for the stage show and maybe being the guy, you get to be on stage with the people, but they don't quite understand the fact that you could then do that and be fully integrated in and potentially move. But also they don't see the difference between the two and the financial difference between creating the two, which is one's a stationary camera and one's a lot of work. So I think we'll get there. I mean, coming back to, I was at maybe Eurogamer, I think it was last year, and if you hadn't booked to use a headset 3 months ahead, you weren't getting to use a headset. So today here at Comic-Con, where you can queue up for 3 hours and get to use a headset, I think we're going in the right direction there. But it's just a little more time will be taken, right?
Okay. So I'm curious though, we're at the heart of all things kind of pop culture today. Do you think that there's going to be a shift in the way that people are thinking about how to create this content and create these experiences, taking into consideration not just VR but just generalistically this evolution of technology and the different ways in which people are creating, whether it's art, whether it's comics or games or movies, thinking about it in different ways? So traditional ink artists, for example, comic artists who are used to pen on paper and actually creating this artwork, they're in an industry now where they're sitting alongside these kids with their tablets and their stylus, drawing up a storm. Do you think there's...
I think it's already happened.
Yeah.
And we're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we sort of put it over here in this box called popular culture.
Yes.
And I have a real bugbear about how we define culture. And for me, this is culture. This isn't just popular culture. It's even bigger than just culture because it is really popular. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like silly titles. I mean, we when I was working at Channel 4 as Education Commissioner there, we launched about 5 years ago at Comic-Con something that we tried to completely transform using technology, the way that comic readers work on iPad. And we did rotoscoping in the manga comics in each issue. We got it illustrated by some really new manga-style comic book artists. We got it written by traditional comic book writers. And we used rotoscoping technique within the panels. We animated it. There was sound throughout it, and it was modern music as well to go along with it. And we tried to, in every issue, have a panel that was animation and a sort of dream sequence, which was then available on YouTube. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that still exists online. And it was an amazing thing. It's called the Thrill Electric, by the way. And what was, and it was a heavy app, that you downloaded, but it was heavy, but it was an experiment. And I think, technology, I often when I come to MCM, I look with jealousy at 15-year-olds because I think, technology has enabled people who are really into a certain thing find each other.
Yes.
And when I was 15, you didn't have that. You literally had to hang in a street corner and wait until you found another cosplayer. And, just being able to share your ideas and share how-tos on how to make this particular costume, or it's just fabulous. I'm so jealous. It doesn't mean that I can't do it now, and I do sometimes at the weekend.
But I am curious what you're most excited for in terms of whether that's a particular IP, a franchise, or whether it's a particular technology. What is it you're most excited for? Imre, I'm looking at you.
I believe that traditional skills are going to be the foundation of anything and everything we do. And I still hire programmers by knowing that they can do math and they can explain complex problems with simple words. I hire artists by saying, "Can you do live drawing?" Like those are going to remain at the forefront. And so, to me, what's exciting is that finding those people and those products which rely on those traditional baseline skills, but then they have the guts to innovate. And for example, with music, I had this one where we went to a meeting with a musician I can't name, and we got into this big debate about 360 versus VR versus room scale VR, and we had this really big discussion, and and I looked at the artist and I said, "What do you think?" Looks back and says, "So you guys all tried VR by now?" And I was like, maybe we need to make a step back here, and I think, but at least that person had that a passion to try something new, and so. To me, this is not even a specific project. Obviously, the best VR experiences will come from Bossa Studios. Obviously, but the question is, who is the second best? That is really that's really the question. And to me, are people who come with that background, that they have the traditional skills and then have the passion to experiment with new things. Because it's a little bit like when the Nintendo Wii came out, and some people made games and then just put it on Nintendo Wii, and some people made Nintendo Wii games. And I think the same we're saying here. Some people just use VR as a screen. It just happens to be a screen I can look around in, and that's neat. But then some people come in and they say, no, I can actually do something really different. So far, I usually see that experimentation coming from smaller developers rather than bigger ones. As you would, it's usually the indies who pick up these kind of things first.
They can afford to take the risk, although they may not have the financial means to be able to do so. But I mean, I'm excited about three things. One is the incredible potential for VR in education. If I'd had VR when I was doing physics, I probably would have continued with physics, because I could not believe you about these atoms. I needed to see it, and so I want to be able to. I want to see
teacher,
these.
I'm skeptical.
I know, exactly.
That was, by the way, my Joe impression. I know it's.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, all right. Well, it was a bit of a pain in the neck at school. It's like, I don't believe you. Prove it. And so I'm really excited about that. And the second thing I'm really excited about is just every single person who was obsessed with Second Life, and I was one of them, and I'm not ashamed of it. When Facebook bought Oculus, we knew exactly what Facebook wanted to do. So that co-presence, and in Second Life, we used to go together with our friends to watch lectures, to watch old films, to take part in game shows in Second Life. It was very weird, and it was great, and I want that with my headset. And then the third thing, I can't wait until the Steven Spielberg film of Ready Player One comes out, because I love that book. It wasn't brilliantly written, but I love that. I've loved near future sci-fi for a very long time, so now it's here.
Don't you feel like we're just already living in the near future sci-fi
Absolutely.
world?
Constant.
When you think back a couple of years, you're like, well, no, we are, definitely.
Yeah.
It's moved so quick.
Just all the time there's something new that's come, and you're just...
If you could have told me as a
fact.
child that I would have a telly in my pocket, I would have wet myself. And I do.
So on that note, what's the technology that you look at and you're most worried about, in terms of you from my perspective as a
Does Trump count?
We don't do politics on this show.
That's all it's on.
It's beyond politics.
Speaking of robots, I still think that Elon Musk was sent back from the future, and he's an AI, and his job is to save humanity from
It does
something.
feel that way a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we've gone off on a tangent.
What are we afraid of? So not robots, politicians, or zombies, so something else, right?
No, well, as an example, one of the things that somebody was talking to me a lot about recently was these new smart pills that can be swallowed, and they can do various different things. So whether that's adjusting your internal, chemical levels for various things, releasing medicines into the body, measuring things, to show you whether you've got cancer or whatever else it's doing. But the idea that you're actually swallowing the technology, and now the technology will be with you for the rest of your life, so it's there till you die. And there are some people who are obviously quite nervous about this idea, that suddenly, if somebody wanted to hack into that technology and abuse that technology, once it's in you and you can't get it out, it's, you're kind of a bit stuck then, if somebody does decide they want to be a little bit unethical about it. And so I'm curious, are there any particular types of technology that maybe you are worried a little bit about? Is somebody thinking about the ethics of this? Are they thinking properly about this before they leap forward into this new exciting technology?
How was it in, I think it was in Jurassic Park, that the scientists, I think someone says that the scientists were so busy figuring out if they can do something that they didn't ask the question if they should do something.
Yes.
And that person who said that was clearly, like me, far lefty liberal. And those are not the people who are going to make these decisions. It's going to be the Republican, business-driven, tax-avoiding. So, no politics. But I actually think that these things are inevitable. And we can portray this as like this really dark future about mass surveillance, about self-driving cars being hacked and accidents caused to people losing their jobs, all that. And we can look at it as a negative thing. And it will negatively affect a lot of people. Self-driving cars, the number of people who will lose their job, basically anyone whose job largely involves driving a vehicle will lose their job. It's just full stop, end of story. And so that is bad, like if you look at the individual level. But the way I see it is that when the combustion engine came out, no one stopped to care about people who were raising horses because they lost their job. These are, on an individual level, they are tragic, but on a society level, they are unstoppable forces. So, and to me, the big revelation was that I am not very keen on Facebook, for example. And that's just me. I just feel uncomfortable like broadcasting that level of information. And I was talking to my nephews and nieces, and they just couldn't care less. For them, it's like, yeah, sure, but they grew up in that. So they don't have to. So my moral standards, I am afraid of these technologies. But for a new generation, this is going to be completely a given which they grew up in, and that's going to be the baseline, and they are fine with it.
But I think we need to have all throughout history, as Amir has sort of said, is that there's always unintended consequences of technology. Text messaging was an unintended consequence of something else, and it took off. And you cannot be, as a society, technologically determinist about this. We have to make sure that it's not about the singularity and humans being taken over by technology. We need to make sure that we are empowering ourselves through technology, and that we're helping kids to understand that they have control, they do have power, they have choice, they have choice over privacy, they have choice over how much information they want to share, and it's a value for value kind of exchange that they have to sort of think about. So I think it's not a particular technology I worry about, it is our inability as a society to make sure that kids are understanding that they have the power and that they can program and not be programmed.
Yes.
It's almost like the speed at which one comes against the other when you're talking about tech. I mean, thinking about privacy, for instance, I'd imagine long-term privacy's pretty much gone out the window, right? Once that happens, all the other things are kind of irrelevant because everybody knows everything that everyone else is doing, and then you can't really be maniacal and sneaky. But that's long-term, so far down the line that it's the race, I guess, isn't it, between can privacy survive against can people keep being assholes?
So I want to thank you all for joining me on this session today. And I'm just going to ask you, as usual, if you would care to share with us your social media handle of choice so that our listeners can find out a little bit more about what you're up to. Tony?
That would be How to Write Tunes, so H2WAT on Twitter. It's the easiest way.
Thank you. And Jo?
I am at Docto, as if you were misspelling doctor with an E at the end instead of an R.
Thank you. And Imre?
Hi, I am on Twitter at Imre Jele and at Bossas Studios.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review, and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd.
digitaljamsessions.com